Hello, everyone, and welcome back to WABAN, the movie and TV show podcast where an expert on the subject discusses things with the average viewer. I am your host, Nim, and today I am joined by the Phantasm.
Nim, your angel of death approaches.
I think she says awaits, typically. Your angel of death awaits. Yeah, it is. I've seen this movie many times.
I had one job.
I've seen this movie many times since I was a young child. So, yeah, we got a DVD that was like a double-sided DVD that had this movie on one side, and on the other side had Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, which is not nearly as good as Mask of the Phantasm. Mask of the Phantasm is definitely much better. But anyways, so we watched Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which is actually short compared to the usual movies we watch. It was only an hour and 15 minutes long. But it came out in 1993 based on a great show that I love. Anyways, first initial thoughts from you?
One of the most emotional Batman that I've ever witnessed. Because usually it's just like the dark and brooding, but there's like full on, like, oh, there was this love story and blah, 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 this, and he's sad now and all this.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's interesting because it almost adds to his sort of dark and brooding sadness. Like, obviously, the main thing that contributes to that in, Batman lore, Batman history is, the death of his parents. He was a kid witnessing his parents get murdered. It's like he didn't have the strength to, stop it. And now it's like, oh, now he's going to make sure he has the strength to stop similar things from happening to other people. Right. It's kind of his whole thing. But this kind of, might add another layer to his sadness. Like, oh, this woman that he fell in love with and proposed to just left without any real explanation. I mean, she kind of had an explanation, like, oh, she left with her dad. That's all he knew, But so that can kind of maybe add an extra layer to that sadness. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I just always thought of any. Well, I guess not quite, but they usually don't focus on emotions when it comes to Batman. It's just he fights the bad guys because he has to. That's his job. He feels like the need to do it because of all this stuff.
So there is an emotional side to Batman, but with Batman, it's more like a deep-seated emotional side where it's like the emotions don't necessarily come out because he kind of keeps it bottled up.
Yeah.
Is kind of the... But in this, you kind of see, and it especially helps you get to see some of his early days as Batman, because obviously he might not have quite have mastered the whole bottling up his emotions thing yet. So, like, and you have that scene. He has that, there's that scene where he's like at his parents' grave, like just letting everything out, like what, like. Things should be different now, like, because he made that promise to them, so it's interesting.
Yeah,
interesting stuff.
It was just so weird to me to see Batman smile, like, genuinely.
Right, yeah, because like you see him smile in some of the other stuff when, like, for like little things. Like there was like I remember a specific thing was like we were watching the episode of the Justice League, and he like. Joker says that he punches Joker and he just gives a little smile, right? He takes down the Joker, but that's not like a genuine, like he's truly happy smile. That's just kind of like a nice little, haha, I got the Joker again, smile. Whereas this, it's like out of true happiness, like he's with someone that he actually loves and he feels like he can be happy. Like he has that moment where he's in that scene where he's talking to his parents. He's like, it's different now. He says, like, I didn't expect to be happy. Like, yeah, he kind of had this vow of, like, he's going to do nothing but focus on fighting crime because he feels like there's nothing else for him. He can't be happy anyways, so he might as well dedicate his life to helping other people find happiness in a way, or like preventing them from going down the same road as him. But it's like he didn't, so this like kind of like takes him by surprise, where it just kind of happens. Then he suddenly is happy, and he's like, wait, what? Doesn't know how to deal with it. Interestingly enough.
Yeah, it is a very interesting addition to the whole character of Batman, because it was like, oh, like he had a chance to not be Batman.
Yeah, exactly. And you know something that's really interesting is a lot of Batman movies, especially like animated movies, take a lot of inspiration from like the comics as far as like characters and stories. Like a lot of them are literally, a lot of animated Batman movies are literally direct, just retellings of stories from the comics.
I mean, there's a lot of material.
Right. This is a completely new story, new characters. Andrea Beaumont, not a character from the comics, created for this movie. The Phantasm, created for this movie. Like, this is an addition to the character of Batman that wasn't just pulled from the comics. It was straight up added by the creators. It is actually cool, kind of what these creators of this movie, not just the movie but the show as well, added to the lore of Batman in general. Like, for instance, the character of Harley Quinn was created for the show. Like, she didn't exist in the comics before the show. Now she's really important to the comics and exists in a lot of the comics and is a super popular character.
I did not know that.
But she was created in the 90s Batman animated series. Like, it is cool. They did a good job at kind of like really creating new things. Especially, I mean, this movie is one of my favorite Batman stories, and it's not even from the comics, which I think is really cool. So yeah. Trying to think what else. So I think it's also interesting because it's sort of like a retelling of the origin story of Batman, but with new context.
Yeah, it's like a middle area between him, like his trauma happening and him actually becoming Batman.
Right. So it's like
the flashback part of it.
Yeah, but it adds a new context to it that really changes it up, switches it up, and makes it fresh. And that's the idea of him finding this love, the love of his life, essentially, right? Or what appears to be at the time. Which really just is, like, I mean, if you compare this to the usual Batman origin story, like even if you compare it to like a live action movie like Batman Begins or something, which I don't know if you've ever seen, probably not, because I think the only one of those movies.
I have no idea what Batman stuff, like Batman animated stuff, that I've watched, because it was all like on TV when I was really young, so it was all just jumbled up.
Yeah, well, Batman Begins is live action. That's the that's the one in the trilogy with the Dark Knight, the one that comes before the Dark Knight.
Then I don't think I did.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But like even that, like the story is about Bruce having this sort of fixed mindset on this idea of creating this persona to fight crime, this larger than life, thing, right? It's not just about fighting crime. It's about creating a symbol. There's a whole discussion on that. So he has this kind of one-track mind focused on that. And that's a cool story, and that's an interesting story. But it's like, what if you take that story and just throw a wrench in there to his plans, where it's like, oh, he has this one-track mind, but then suddenly he doesn't anymore, because now he has this other thing that he's focused on too. And it's like, wait, how does he split his focus between the two? How does he do the one properly? How does he do the whole crime fighting thing properly if he also has to be in a relationship, right?
Yeah, there was that whole him fighting the bikers scene, and he was doing great until he heard the girl like worry about him and say his name, and he loses focus completely, and then he goes back to Walter.
Yeah.
Or Alfred. Why Walter?
Walter.
That's
Walter.
the other really common butler name, Alfred.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't do this. I can't do both. I can't fight crime like this if somebody's waiting for me to come home.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because, he proposes to her and he kind of plans on not being Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like if they had stayed together, if she hadn't have had to leave because of, the people that her father got involved with, then Batman might have never existed. It's kind of like an interesting little thing.
Yeah.
Because the scene where she leaves is pretty much immediately followed by the scene of him first putting on the suit, the Batman suit. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like Batman couldn't have been like, that was the moment of Batman being born. Like the birth of Batman was, he puts on the mask, which this is a really cool scene where he puts on the mask and like Alfred looks at him for the first time and he's like frightened of him for a second too, to show. And it's not only because he's frightened of him because he has a scary look, but it's also kind of like oh no, what has Bruce become? Like it's almost like what have I allowed Bruce to become, because like he was, ever since his parents died, he's been essentially, raised Bruce and stuff. So he's kind of responsible for him.
Yeah. The whole thing is like, he tries to choose the girl, to choose love and a normal, happy life. Yeah. And the world doesn't allow him to, and so he gets railroaded back into the other choice of being Batman.
Yeah, it's kind of
full in on it.
Yeah, and it's kind of this idea that like he puts his entire idea of like he puts all of his happiness into her, of like she is my only chance of happiness. So if she's gone, then there's nothing. So all I have left is Batman. So it's like the birth of Batman. Like I like that the scene where he puts on the suit for the first time doesn't happen until after she leaves, because it's kind of creates this idea that like the true birth of Batman can't happen until his happiness is gone.
I just thought of a really dark way of wording it, but Batman can't exist until Bruce Wayne is dead, basically.
Right. That's kind of what it comes down to. And that's actually a big idea in a lot of Batman lore, is the idea that Bruce Wayne is dead. Bruce Wayne is just the mask that Batman puts on, right? The real mask is, and that's a big thing in a lot of Batman stories. But even a little bit in here too, right? It's really interesting stuff. And then it's kind of cool. I really like how like the movie starts simple. It just kind of has this, he's just kind of taken down this average mob boss guy, but then this person just comes in and kills him, and people think it's Batman and stuff. And so first off, this movie has a really good mystery aspect of it, like who is the Phantasm, why are they killing these people, and it actually has a decent mystery where like it's not like you could figure it out before, but like it's not like super easy to figure out. Like I don't know if you were able to figure it out or not.
I don't know. I didn't really try to figure it out. I just felt like
you just kind of like let it happen.
Be some like random person in the mask, because there wasn't a lot of characters. Like I was thinking maybe it could have been the guy who kept accusing Batman of killing the people.
Yeah.
But also that felt too obvious. So I was just like, let it play out.
Yeah. It's one of those things where when it happens and you realize it's her, it's like shocking in a way, but it also makes a lot of sense. You go, everything kind of pieces together. Like there's like even like little details, like there's the scene. So he's like chasing after the Phantasm. The cops show up to distract him. Phantasm disappears. He's running away from the cops. Then all of a sudden, Andrea, out of nowhere, pulls up in her car to help him. And you're like, what?
Oh.
How did she know? Like, how was she randomly there? Like, she says in the scene, she says, oh, I saw it on the news. I had to come help you. Which, like, okay, makes you go, okay, I guess that makes sense. But when you later on, you're like, oh, that's why she was there, because she was there the whole time. Like, because she was the Phantasm. So it's like, and then, you know, just in general, it makes a lot of sense, because it's like, well, yeah, it makes, like, these specific people that she's killing are out of revenge for her father, for her father's death. So it's like, it kind of, so, you know, it makes sense that she's going to kill these specific people. So it all just kind of comes together, and it becomes this story it's about the modern time. Like, the flashbacks become essential to the story. So it's not just flashbacks just to flesh out characters. It's flashbacks that are kind of needed to really, you know, piece the whole story together. Those flashbacks are part of the story. The history of what happened with those characters is part of the overall story that's needed, you know.
I'm also thinking about the moment where like she shows that she also has, like, maybe not martial arts training, but like combat training to defend herself.
Yeah. Well, right, because it's like 10 years ago, Bruce is like, he's doing jujitsu and stuff, and then she, like, does a quick move to, like, take him down, and it's like a cute moment, but, like, in the back of your head, it kind of creates this idea of, like, oh, she knows how to fight. Yeah. So then now you're like, oh yeah, so it makes sense that she'd be able to, yeah.
There was the whole thing with the smoky stuff, and Batman was like, oh, it's this thing, and he just says a bunch of long words, and I'm just like, cool, I don't know how that makes her disappear and teleport and bullets phase through her, but awesome.
Yeah, it's that I've always thought was interesting, because I always got the idea that it's like she's kind of doing the Batman thing where it's like he disappears without actually disappearing. He just makes it seem like it, like, oh, but she uses the smoke to hide what she's really doing. But there are also some scenes where it's a little like, okay, how would she have been able to do that? You're like, I don't know. It's a little unbelievable, but at the end of the day, I don't really care that much, because it's like, you know, it's fine, because it's, I mean, a lot of Batman scenes are like that too, where you're like, okay, how did he disappear that quickly? Like, somebody turns and looks back a second later and he's gone, and you're like, how? You know? So I'm okay with it. But it's, I mean, you know, it's a comic book movie. It's, you know,
true. Yeah, it's
gonna have comic book aspects.
It does it in a fun way. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, this movie is also pretty dark. I mean, and like, obviously it's a Batman story, so it makes sense for it to have dark elements, but like, especially for like just a kids movie, kind of like based on a kids show kind of, you know, thing, like the one guy in the grave gets crushed by the headstone. She goes to talk to, like, the one guy. She goes to kill the one guy, and he's turns the chair. He's already just dead. You just see his dead body just there, and then, like, because the Joker got him already. Yeah, like, and then, like, Batman. There's multiple times in this where Batman is bleeding. You know, like,
oh yeah.
Like, in the entirety of the TV show of Avatar, there was only one instance where you got to see blood.
Wait, really?
Yes. And that was the scene in Appa's Lost Days when he has, like, the needles stuck into him, and he pulls one out, and there's, like, a little bit of blood on it.
No.
Yeah, it's sad. But that's, like, the only time in the whole show where you see blood. But, like, this movie's just kind of like, nah, fuck it, we're going to show it all the time. Which is...
Yeah. There's quite a lot of deaths and stuff in this one, which was shocking. Yeah.
But, like, I love when movies like this and, like, stuff like this shows that, like, you know what, kids can watch things with this in it. Like, obviously you can't go overboard and make it, like, just completely gory all the time. But, like, kids can handle a little bit of this stuff. Like, come on. Like, because, like, you know, in Avatar, you know, they didn't do it more because they probably weren't allowed to, right? They probably, Nickelodeon was like, no, you can't do this. But it's, I don't know. It's nice to see like when they're like, okay, they realize like, yeah, kids can handle this stuff like to an extent, I mean, I loved this movie as a kid, so
yeah, it's rather refreshing, I have to say. You did also mention the guy getting crushed by the headstone, the statue.
Mm-hmm.
That moment just like neuron fired to my brain because I was like, oh, it's the angel of death. Because that statue was
the statue is like an angel. Yeah, it's actually crazy. This movie does a lot of cool things with a lot of like just symbolism with things like that. So like a really cool thing that I want to point out too is like the idea of the final sort of like location of the final battles, the final moments is the I guess like a future amusement park thing.
Yeah, it was something that, like a showcase of potential future technologies, right? Or whatever.
So that is originally shown in one of the flashbacks where Bruce and Andrea are on a date there. And are talking about the future. Bruce gets the idea for the Batmobile there, but yeah, and it's like this great, nice, pristine place. All the, it's like the future. It's so bright and amazing and exciting and happy. 10 years later, it's kind of broken down. It's just broken down and disgusting and not great. And it's kind of like
living there with his animatronic wife cutting stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it's kind of cool because it kind of symbolizes the difference in perspective of like the characters, because it's like 10 years ago at the time when Bruce was first there, he was also, bright and happy and excited for what the future had to bring, and like, really just happy. Then like 10 years later, now Bruce is in kind of a broken down, depressed state. It's kind of like the future that was promised is now broken down, and so it's kind of like a cool symbolism there, which I really like. Yeah, and it just created a really cool place for a final showdown. So
with all like the weird robots singing and stuff, and the buildings and all that.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess we could talk about the Joker's involvement in the movie.
Yeah, he kind of like, they tied him in, and then it was suddenly just about Batman fighting Joker again, which was weird, but it worked, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, the thing is, like, you don't need a detailed introduction to the character of the Joker, I think, because he's the Joker. If you're watching this movie, you probably know Batman well enough to know like who the Joker is. You know what he's about. He's the Joker. So it's kind of it kind of is a nice way to kind of add an element to the movie that is like add a regular Batman villain, because obviously the movie is it's the Phantasm who's created for this movie, and then like these mob bosses who are just characters who I think might have been created specifically for this movie as well. I'm pretty sure. So it's kind of interesting to be like, okay, there's like an aspect of it that's, that way. It was kind of interesting. And like, this does bring up the whole idea of the Joker not having an origin story, but like in this, it's like he kind of does.
Yeah, because he was apparently friends with those mob bosses because he was in that picture.
Not really an origin story, because it doesn't explain how he became the Joker, but like, I think I'm fine with it in this movie, because I think, first off, this is just one version of the character. It's not like this is, the definitive origin or anything like that. Also, like, it doesn't really explain much. All you know is I don't even know if it says what his name was.
No, it literally just shows Batman looking at the photo and being like, wait a second, draws a smile on it. That's the Joker.
Yeah, like, out of the 4 of them that she wants to kill, he seemed to be the most, like, the least known one. Like, he was just the guy that hung out with them and didn't really say much of anything. Actually, I don't think he talked at all, which I think they did that, like, in the flashbacks, which I think they did that on purpose to make it so you wouldn't be able to figure it out. Because, like, if you heard Mark Hamill's voice, you'd be like, wait a minute, why is he...
Right.
But then, like, when it happens and like Batman looks and it's actually interesting because the part where Batman notices that it's the Joker and he like looks at the picture and he's like, wait a minute, actually happens before you even see the Joker in the movie. So it's kind of like,
wait, does it?
I think it does, because the first time you see the Joker is when Sal goes to meet the Joker to like get his help to like
I think you've watched this movie many more times than I have, so
wait. No, I could be wrong. No, I could be wrong.
Because I just remember looking at that picture and also thinking that looked like the Joker.
Okay, you're wrong. I was wrong. My brain was just thinking of it wrong. Yeah, I'm thinking of it now. You're right. No, it was after.
I was having like a mental breakdown. Like,
right?
What? Why did that happen then?
So, anyways, the Joker's there. The Joker's introduced. Sal goes to get him help, and it's interesting because you kind of get this idea that you could tell from that scene that they have some sort of relationship. They have some sort of history together, right? He knows the Joker personally, right? And the Joker's referring to him his old pal Sal. He's like, I'm ready to help my old pal Sal. That line I always remember that line. But you don't fully get like, oh yeah, he's definitely this guy. Like when you really look at the character, you know, you look at his face, like the face shape and everything, you're like, oh, you kind of see like, yeah, he does look kind of like the Joker, obviously without the makeup and stuff on.
Right.
But so when it happens, it kind of makes sense. It pulls it together where it's like, oh, that's why he knew him. That's why they know each other. That's why he's specifically going to the Joker for help in this situation, because you know the Joker is probably invested in this situation as well, considering the fact that, you know, if they're targeting these guys specifically, he's going to be a target as well. So it makes sense. It kind of makes that earlier scene make more sense, where you're like, okay, why did he go to the Joker specifically?
Without that, going to the Joker for help just seems like a horrid idea.
Yeah, so then you have that scene, and then later you have the moment where Batman notices it's the Joker, and then that moment is immediately followed by the scene where the Joker comes into that to talk to that one other guy who I cannot remember the name of.
The secondary love interest of the girl.
Yeah,
that was accusing the press dude with the media guy.
Yeah,
I don't remember his name.
But and as usual, Mark Hamill's Joker is just super entertaining. Like when he goes into his like, he's just living in this like the future amusement park thing.
Yeah,
which, you know, it is like a common thing in Joker for the Joker to like kind of just like live in old abandoned amusement parks and like that type of thing, you know?
Yeah, just the creepy run down, like supposed to be fun places.
Yeah, which makes sense because he's, you know, for a character like the Joker, he's a clown, right? It makes sense. Like it's just kind of fitting.
Oh yeah.
And he just like comes in and just kicks the robot dog, and he's just talking.
He counts that as his security system.
Talking to the robot woman like she's a real person, like she's his real wife. Meatloaf again. Like
making her cut up just random stuff as she's stuck in that motion.
Well, and then it's like, it's interesting too, because you also find out like, oh, like he really did a lot of work on this place himself too, because later on he had that robot programmed to be able to attack people, because he attacks Andrea with that robot attacks Andrea when she comes to try to kill him. So it's like, I don't know, the Joker just continues to be a fun character. And then like I don't know if I have much more to say, but he's just really cool. And I think he gives one of my favorite Joker laughs in this movie. The scene where Andrea has him and she's like, clearly ready to like kill him or like make sure that he's dead, and he has this moment of like realization that this could very likely be the end, and he might be dead, he might die, and he just lets out one really big laugh. And he's like one tooth missing too, like he's bloody from when Batman punched him. Like, it's really cool. But
there's something really unique about the Joker of just like, there's never any fear kind of stuff. It is just hilarity he finds in every single moment, even the most terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like The Dark Knight, there's the scene where Batman is interrogating him in the, interrogation room. And you've seen in those, if you watched like that movie, even earlier in that movie and in like Batman Begins, the movie that comes before, when he interrogates people, they're like terrified of him typically. But in this scene, he's yelling at Joker, he's punching him, throwing him against the wall, and he's just like laughing, and he's like, you have nothing to threaten me with. Like, and it's, like, yeah, that's the Joker. Like, he's like, yeah, beat me up, punch me, kill me, whatever.
Yeah, it's just all fun for him. So
yeah,
you just can't do anything. It just bounces off.
Right. It's like you can't properly interrogate the Joker, right? He will tell you information if he wants you to know it. But if he doesn't want you to know information, you're not going to get it out of him, like. But yeah. So there's one thing though that I did find interesting about the ending of the movie, though, is I was a little confused on like, did the Joker die? Did she, because it's shown at the end that she survived, right? So it's kind of like, I don't know. I was still a little iffy on that, but
I mean, no way the Joker died, right?
Right, that's the thing. Is like, unless this is supposed to be a separate like version where he did die in this moment, because obviously he survives after this, right? He's he's in the DC animated universe more,
right?
So I don't know. It's just
it's just so vague about it, because obviously like, you know that Batman survives because of course he would, and you see her survive, but there's no mention of the Joker. But like, if it's a continuous thing, like he pops up later, and you don't assume that they're just going to kill off like, the main villain of Batman. Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because it's like, if he didn't die, that means she didn't kill him, meaning she didn't succeed in her goal. So, but she left Gotham at the end. We see she's on a boat leaving. So
maybe she assumes that he's dead or something like that.
Yeah, possibly. That's the thing. Either that, or maybe she finally realized, like, vengeance isn't going to solve anything, and she's like, you know what, I'm just going to leave and start like a new life, or something. Like, there's, it's definitely a very bittersweet ending of like, it's about, probably more bitter than sweet, actually. More just a bitter ending.
It's bitter.
Because it's like, they finally found each other again, and they're finally like, kind of like, hey, we'll actually make this thing work again. And then they're separated again. And I think I really like the little moment at the end between Bruce and Alfred, where he's like, I tried to save her, and he has this whole thing. And he's like, he's like, I'm so happy you never fell into that pit of like absolute despair, and he's like, because Batman probably comes close to it. Yeah, the pit of vengeance. And Alfred has his whole speech on it. He's like, I am so thankful all the time that you never fell into that. But she fell into that pit years ago, and not even you could pull her out. And it's kind of like this idea of like, at a certain point, somebody becomes so far gone that it's like you can't do anything about it. You can't pull them out. You can't save them. Because you even... Sorry, continue.
I just really like it as a warning to Bruce. Because in most of them, he just goes full in. In most like stories of Batman, he goes full in on being Batman. Bruce basically doesn't exist anymore. It's just a cover up for Batman. And that's what he does. That is his life. But in this one, it warns him to be like, you can do this, but don't go too far or you're going to lose yourself and you're not going to be able to get back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is the whole idea of the whole no killing thing, the whole no killing rule. It's not necessarily like, because there's always that argument of like, oh, well, yeah, he shouldn't go around killing everyone, but why doesn't he kill the Joker? He keeps escaping and killing more people. And it's kind of like this idea of, well, maybe that would be enough to send him down that path, to really just send him down that downward spiral. Like just doing it once would be enough. And that's the thing that's brought up in other Batman movies as well. I'm specifically thinking of a line of dialogue in Under the Red Hood, which maybe we can watch at some point. It's like, so I might not say what it is, but
it's like the idea that rule is like his last resort anchor to staying a good guy and not going down such a dark path.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and it's this idea that like he so easily could, like there's probably so many times where he wants to just kill the Joker. Especially obviously in the stories. I don't know how much you know about the stories, but like, certain points Joker kills specific people that Bruce is very close to, and it'd be very easy for him to just do it and end it, but he just can't. Like it's like he's like holding back from doing that because he knows that if he does, it'll just completely corrupt him, basically.
I mean, I can imagine already just him making that one exception to the rule for Joker. And then suddenly that opens up the possibility for more exceptions and more exceptions until the rule doesn't matter anymore.
Right. Until he's no longer... Yeah, until he just becomes... he becomes judge, jury, and executioner, or...
Yep.
Yeah, he just becomes... Right. At this point... His whole thing is he just wants to stop people from doing bad things. He wants to help people, capture somebody. They go through due process, whatever. But it's like now he's the judge who decides whether you can live or die. And it's like, oh, he doesn't want to become that. He doesn't want to become a Light Yagami, basically.
No,
who just judges who lives and dies. Yeah. But it's... Yeah, I think that's one of the more interesting things of the character of Batman that's explored well in a lot of different things, which is why, like, there are versions of the character where he does just kill people and it just kind of takes away some of the more interesting aspects.
Yeah, I see what you mean now.
Yeah, so it's kind of like,
I don't actually remember any Batman that actually do kill.
So there's in the 1989 Tim Burton Batman movies. Well, there's the 1989 one. There's Batman, and then there's Batman Returns. Where it was. Why can't I think of his name? I know his name. Michael Keaton playing Batman. He just killed people in there. Like, like one of the Joker's henchmen, he just like shoves down a thing to fall to his death or something, or like he straps a bomb to one of them and like pushes them back so they blow up. Like he very clearly is like, yep, like just doesn't give a flying fuck about killing.
Yeah, no, that's pretty extreme. I also love how the moment that I asked that, you were just like, in 1989, and I'm just like, this man's an encyclopedia of this shit. What the hell?
Well, I mean, that was a pretty popular movie. That was like one of the first big live action Batman movies. I mean, besides like the 60s Batman, but that was, a whole different type of thing. Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb, we should watch that movie. Oh my gosh, that movie's
honestly great. The super old superhero stuff, anytime I look at it, I do want to watch some of it, but also it just seems so obviously outdated, but like all the costumes are terrible, and like nothing of it seems good or well made, but I do still want to watch them.
So that show in particular, the 60s Batman show, and the movie, which I never actually watched the show. I watched the movie because we used to have it. The movie that was based on that show. It was all very like purposefully cheesy and bad.
Oh, okay.
Like that's and exactly over the top.
I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, because it was like the whole kind of so it's more of a comedy than anything, right? So it's the whole idea is that it's like everything is so ridiculous and over the top, yet the characters take everything so seriously. So that's kind of the joke, right? So it's like it just becomes hilarious, and like the main actor Adam West was great at like playing that, doing that, It's not a good representation of the character from the comics at all.
Right.
But it's still a hilarious show.
Is that... Okay, well, there's probably more than one of this. Is that one of the ones where it is literally just like tights and like the Speedo over the tights, and like it's just really shitty and basic costume?
Yeah, okay, pretty much. Okay. And that's where the whole thing of like Robin going like, holy whatever Batman, that's like what that's from,
Right, what is that thing that he says?
Holy, it's different every time depending on the situation.
Batman?
Holy fish sticks Batman. It depends on the situation, like what, like it'll like if there's a let's say, I don't know, a bananas involved in the villain's plot, he'd be like, holy bananas Batman, it depends on the situation. Yeah. But that was oh man, that's great. I don't know if you've ever seen the bomb scene from the movie.
I don't believe I have, no.
Where there's a bomb, like it's like the cartoonish bomb where it's just a big circle with like a fuse on it, and he's like trying to get rid of it. He's like running around trying to find somewhere to throw it to like, but like there's people everywhere, and it is a hilarious scene. And it has one of my favorite lines from that this is from a scene from the movie. It's great. But anyways, that's a little off track. That's a very, very different version of Batman than the one we're talking about here. But yeah, no, there are versions of Batman that kill. That was
okay.
That was kind of like what started this whole tangent. And then I ended up talking about that version does not kill. The 60s version, that's something they get right in the 60s version. He does not kill. So,
how many different versions of Batman have we just talked about?
Well, let's see. There's the Tim Burton one that kills. The Tim Burton one is definitely more of a style over substance kind of thing, where it's like stylistically, it's like really cool. It's got this cool kind of like dark gothic style to it that like really fits Batman really well. But like as far as the character goes, like he kills people, which is kind of weird and You know, the Joker
Right.
in that version was okay, I guess. He like the actor played him well, but he was like, I don't know. To me, at least, didn't feel quite like the Joker. But you know, what do I know? What do I know? But yeah. And then there was also the Ben Affleck version of Batman would kill people sometimes. So, but that one sucked. So,
honestly, at this point, I'm just enjoying you going off on Batman versions and lore. I'm just like, you just know all of this stuff, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I even know like a decent amount about the comics, despite the fact that I've never once read a Batman comic in my life. So, and like the different Robins that there've been like 5, right? 5 Robins. Obviously, the most famous one, Dick Grayson, and then there was Jason Todd, and Tim Drake, Damian Wayne, and then there was a girl one, Stephanie something. No, yeah, maybe. Can't remember her name. Stephanie Brown? No. Yes. No, something like that. Probably is. I think that's right. Yeah. But anyways, that's unrelated to what we're talking about here.
Right.
But,
Sorry.
So, anyways, Mask of the Phantasm. It's great. I really like it. I think it's a really good Batman story. It's a movie that does a really good job at exploring Batman as a character in general, just like exploring the idea of Batman and the psychology of Batman, and kind of just as far as Batman stories go, it's a really good one.
Yeah, it adds a whole nother layer to the character.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's one of the definitive, like, it's like an essential Batman story to me.
I can see why, yeah, because all the others, my brain is just like, yeah, he figures stuff out and punches people.
Right, exactly. Like, The Dark Knight is a really good movie, but, like, as far as Batman goes, it doesn't feel quite like a Batman story completely, right? Like, it is, but it's like, it's kind of different enough where it's like, okay. But it's a really good movie on its own. But as a Batman movie, it's like, that really represents the character of Batman purely, like the way it's supposed to be. It's like, Mask of the Phantasm is great for that. And like, it even includes a representation of the Joker, who's the most iconic Batman villain as well. So that kind of, makes it a nice, complete Batman package.
Yeah. A nice tie into the main stuff as well as the added stuff.
Yeah. And it's my favorite Batman voice, my favorite Joker voice. So, perfect. Luke Skywalker is the Joker. I know. It's crazy.
Imagine that.
And also Fire Lord Ozai.
I want like a weird like crossover episode of just random junk like Avatar, Batman, and Star Wars. And for just like all three of these characters just merge into one and just be really confused as they start switching between voices.
Yeah, right. Because it's like Fire Lord Ozai and Joker are two characters that those three characters would not get along, right? Joker would be an enemy to Luke Skywalker easily, and an enemy to Fire Lord Ozai.
Joker is an enemy to himself, even. Like,
Joker's an enemy to everyone. Yeah. Because like Joker's whole thing is about chaos, causing chaos, whereas Ozai wants to control everything, right? So it's like opposite ideals. They're both evil, but like different ways. Luke Skywalker's whole thing is, that he's really good, and he's gonna fight evil.
Right.
So he's gonna be, which is cool because it shows that he's Mark Hamill's got really good range.
Yeah,
with
Luke Skywalker is like lawful good. Firelord Ozai is lawful evil, and then the Joker is chaotic evil.
Yeah. So Just need chaotic good, and then we'll be all set. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, I don't know. I'm trying to think if I have more to say about Mask of the Phantasm specifically. Oh, here's one thing I wanted to point out about the movie. Let's get back on track here.
Oh yeah. Right.
So the opening scene. So it opens with like the opening credits. Going. Having these like shots moving through Gotham City, which is a good way to set up the movie. But like that paired with the music was really good at setting the tone, I think. Like, I don't know if you could tell. So I don't know if you know what the Batman theme music was from like the Batman animated series.
It's not like the
no, that's from the 60s. That's from the 60s show.
Okay, that makes sense. That's the only one that I know.
No, so the theme music from, I mean, you can watch like the intro to the Batman series on it, but it's kind of like a
That does sound familiar, but it might just be from the movie that we just watched.
But like in the opening, the music, it played sort of like an orchestral version of that. So like there was the voices like, oh, and then they were like, except they were like saying something in a different language. I don't know exactly, but it sounds really good and I love it. So like I love that music in this movie. And I think it ends with similar music, like the final moment of the movie, which it's kind of cool that like the movie just kind of ends with a simple moment. Like Batman is just standing on a building and that the epic shot of Batman just standing on top of a building in the darkness. That's like classic to Batman imagery. And then he just sees the bat signal, swings off, and then it's like comes towards the camera, and then it goes to black as it goes to his cape because it's black. Nice little ending shot.
Yeah, classic Batman stuff.
Yeah, another actually classic Batman thing that's in this movie as well is the whole idea of, which this happens sometimes in different Batman stories, is the idea of like his relationship with the police not always being the best.
Oh yeah,
right. Where it's like
the vigilante idea.
Yeah. Now in this, it's taken up a notch because they actually believe that he killed people. Which typically it's just kind of like a little bit of and they have a little bit of an issue with it. And sometimes there's people in the police who don't try to like capture him or whatever. But then the whole idea is like Jim Gordon is the only one in the police force who truly trusts Batman and is actually, likes Batman. Because like even in this, he's like, Batman didn't do it, despite like what everyone else is saying. Batman didn't do it. Batman does not kill people. Like Gordon was just straight up like,
yeah, he just wasn't having it.
Yeah. So it kind of gets that whole thing. And then like, I really liked the scene where the police are after him. I think that was done really well. It was cool. Cause like, first you get this moment of Batman, outwitting them a little bit. Like he sends the thing flying. They think it's Batman. They're shooting at him. Turns out it's just, he put the cape and cowl on like a frickin' whatever you call it.
A
piece of wood.
Horse, yeah.
The sawhorse thing, whatever they're called, yeah. But it also kind of, there's a cool element to it, because a lot of times in scenes like that, it's like, Batman's running away from the police, he struggles a little bit and then he escapes. I don't know, there was just it was a very visceral feel to this one, where it was like Batman truly felt cornered by them, like where he felt like it was like seriously like, and he's like, there's that moment where he's like looking at his hand with the blood on his hand, and like this vision is blurred, and like, it truly felt like he was really like, and like if they caught him, obviously he wasn't even wearing his mask anymore. They would obviously be able to see like who he is and stuff. Like it truly felt like it really did a good job of like being suspenseful because of that, I think. Like,
yeah, because most of the time it's just like, oh, he's gonna get out. He's Batman.
Mhm.
There's no way that he's not gonna get out. But this one, it layered a ton of stuff on that was like, oh, he's hurt. He's struggling. He took off his cowl, even though that's severely risky. And now, if he gets captured, he's fully done.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and it ends. And at first, if you first watch the movie and you don't know that Andrea is the Phantasm, it seems like kind of a cop-out ending to that scene where it's like, oh, she just shows up to save him out of nowhere. That's convenient, you know. But like, when you actually get to the end and you realize the full context of it, it's like, oh, that actually makes sense that it would end that way. And it's kind of interesting to see the idea of, like, you know, Batman needing somebody else's help too is kind of, because it's like, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of like, because usually Batman is kind of good at just doing everything on his own and doesn't need anybody's help, you know. He outwits everyone. He's always 10 steps ahead of everyone, you know, as we saw in that one Justice League episode where he's tricks all the villains.
Yeah, and then just gets out on his own anyway.
He's just like, I could have gotten out anytime. I just chose to stay. But it's nice to see him in a more vulnerable position where he needs to have help from somebody else. Like, it makes him feel more human, you know? Like, it is nice to see scenes where he's like completely in control and he's just an absolute badass. But you know, it's nice to every once in a while get these moments of like vulnerability where it's like, he's still human, you know. It's nice to see that, I think.
You talking about this just brought up in my head, like, oh, he's not too far off of Superman, but in like a different way. Because like Superman's just, oh yeah, he's can do anything. He, you know, lift this building or the planet, who cares? Like, he doesn't have a limit for that. But Batman does the same thing, but just with like figuring out the situation and skillfully like getting out of it with technology and smarts. And so this was a really refreshing thing of like, oh, he's failing at doing that. This is like he's in actual danger and can't do that stuff right now.
Well, it's really showcasing the man part of Batman, right? Yeah. He is just a man at the end of the day. You know, and I think in general this movie does a good job at doing that. In general, just kind of really showing the humanity of Batman and Bruce Wayne. You know, really showcasing the man in Batman. You know.
I had a conversation with friends yesterday that happened to be about this. The one guy was like, "What's a hill that you'll die on?" And someone says that Batman's not a superhero; he's just a regular hero. And they're kind of right.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Just,
I think it's
very
like
fitting for this. Like, he's not all that super. He's just a normal dude.
He is, but it's like the way he presents himself and the way he sort of is mythologized by the people around him in his city is that he is a superhero. You know, like I remember like
on the same level as Superman and all the others.
Right, exactly. They're like people in Gotham. Like I remember scenes from the show, from the animated series, where like some of the people like are like actually think he has superpowers sometimes. Like, oh, I thought he was like flying, or like, oh, he, you know, like this one guy from his perspective, like Batman threw a batarang and like knocked a guy down or something like that.
Right.
He's like, but from this guy's one person's perspective, he said like it looked like he just moved his hand and then he fell over. Like, whoa! Like he's thinking of like it's like magic powers, but like it's not. So it's kind of like he's technically not a superhero, but he makes himself a superhero.
Yeah, he's able to stand on the same level as them, and like through these mostly mundane means,
but like still through his pure dedication that he's able to stand on the same, like, you know, why is Batman a member of the Justice League? I mean, I guess technically in the Justice League show, he's not technically a member, but like he basically is. And like, I mean, they asked him to be a member too. Like, they wanted him to be like, he doesn't have powers. So, but all these other guys have these amazing powers. So it's like, oh, because he's just that, you know, he's that dedicated to like make himself the ultra, you know, most powerful man he can possibly be, despite not having powers.
Right.
And he tries to present himself in that way of like, you know, Batman is supposed to be more of a myth and a legend it's an idea. It's something supernatural, superhuman, even though it's not. But like he's presented it in that way where like the people of Gotham think of it in that way. It's like this mythological creature hiding in the shadows, ready to take down criminals, you know, not just some man in a bat suit, you know, like that's not how the people of Gotham think of it. It is just
like alternate universe Mothman.
Yeah, but like it is just a man in a bat suit. But that's not how the people of Gotham think of it, because that's not how Batman presents himself to the public of Gotham. Which is part of why he does the whole hiding in the shadows kind of thing. You know, doesn't come out and fight in public, because then it'd be easier to be like, oh, yeah, he's just a guy in a bat suit.
Yeah, it
ruins the illusion. Because he hides in the shadows, and he's like, you know, and in the new Batman movie actually has some really cool like opening sequence that kind of gets into this whole idea, and it's actually really cool. But it's like, yeah, he hides in the shadows, and he's like, so you never see where he's coming from. So that kind of makes him feel more larger than life and mythological than if you just saw him fighting in broad daylight and saw every part of him just fighting all the time, you know, out in front of millions of people. You know, the same way like Superman would be, or, you know, other superheroes. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, like it is interesting because you would think that criminals would be much more scared of Superman, because, you know, just picks up a building like it's nothing. But Superman like flies around just helping people, taking out bad guys and doing whatever with his powers. But you never know when Batman's gonna show up. Batman's like the monster under their beds kind of thing that's like just there to scare them and show up when they least expect it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, I will say this. I mean, this is like in the opening of the Batman movie, but basically it's like it's showing all these different crimes happening. Like, you know, somebody's vandalizing something, somebody's like robbing a little store, somebody, you know, these guys are like beating up on somebody. Like it shows these multiple different throughout Gotham at the night, but then it says like everybody's kind of like looking in where there's dark shadows, and they're like scared. They're like, wait, is he there? He could be. Like, it's like every criminal is thinking he could be there, even though like he's probably not, because he can only be in one place at once. But he creates that fear in the back of your head of like, what if he's in the shadows ready to, you know, come out and beat me up? You know, and like they see the bat signal in the sky, and that automatically terrifies them. Like, even for committing the smallest of crimes, they're like terrified. It's like they have this whole thing at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, the bats on really the move, cool. So
yeah, like even though most of these people didn't encounter Batman at all, it's just the thought that like he could be out there, and they've heard the legends, they've heard the stories, they know, you know. It's like the scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker comes into the mobs having their like little meeting, but it's like during the day, and he's like, I know why you have your group therapy sessions in broad daylight. It's the Batman. You know. That's the scene where he's just like, what happened? Did your balls drop off?
Or I'll make this pencil disappear. Slam.
Yeah, it's the same scene. Yep.
God, such a good magic trick.
But anyways, so we've kind of gotten off track of talking about Mask of the Phantasm specifically and kind of been going off on just Batman in general. Which, I mean, I think this is a good movie to, like, spark that conversation, because this movie just has such a good, like, understanding of the character and hits so many of these different, like, key core aspects of the character that it very easily sparks just a general discussion of Batman. So makes sense. But yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say about the movie itself. It's really good. The story, it's short, it's an hour and 15 minutes. But it's just a nice little Batman story. I really like it. It adds more into the Batman lore. It retells some of the Batman stuff with the origin story, while also adding more to it to add context, which is really cool. And it's just, generally a really good story. So yeah, I definitely recommend Batman Mask of the Phantasm to anyone. I don't know if I don't really have much more to say about it. Do you?
I have a stupid joke.
Go for it.
So Robin goes up to Batman. He says, "The Batmobile won't start." And Batman says, "Well, did you check the battery?" And Robin goes, "What's an hurry?"
Yeah, I knew that. I knew where that was going when you said battery. The battery. That's like...
it was just in my head, this entire thing. I'm just like, no, don't.
So, the whole, like, naming everything Bat something...
Except for Conditioner Gordon.
Yeah. is a big thing in the 60s show. So, like, they have the Bat helicopter. They drop the ladder from the helicopter, and at the bottom, there's a sign that just says Bat Ladder. And then a shark, they're near the ocean, a shark jumps up and starts biting Batman's leg, and he says to Robin, "Can you pass me the Bat Shark repellent?"
Yep.
And he passes him the Bat Shark repellent, and so that's kind of like a big thing in that show. Like, obviously in normal Batman, there are some things, like there's the Batmobile, the Batwing, which is like the thing that his flying thing, and then like the Batarang, and then the Bat motorcycle, Bat cycle. There's like things like that kind of make more sense, like whatever little. But it is funny that in that show that was so detailed that it's like the Bat Ladder. The Bat Shark repellent was actually featured in the Lego Batman movie, obviously as a joke to reference the 60s Batman. There's actually a part of the movie that referenced that, which was funny. But if you like Batman and like funny making fun of Batman lore, then the Lego Batman movie is a good movie for that. But anyways, yeah. Sorry, I'm just like going off with all this Batman knowledge that I have.
You're
I'm just
good.
Like,
it's entertaining. Thanks for me.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't really have much more to say. Maybe we'll explore more Batman content in the future. I mean, obviously, we're still doing the Justice League, so that's that's Batman content. Just not solo Batman content, but still Batman. So, yeah. Anyways, that's about all. So next week, we are going to continue our discussion on the Justice League. We are going to finish talking about Season 1 of the Justice League, which I'm really excited for. I think this season gets I think there's some interesting episodes coming up, if I remember. I don't know. I think Season 2 is where the show gets better, from what I remember. I remember Season 1 more than I remember Season 2, though, because I watched Season 1 a lot as a kid because we had it on DVD. So... I think I only watched through the entirety of Season 2 like once, so it'll actually be kind of like more of a nice surprise to, like, I might actually be surprised by things in Season 2.
Right.
But yeah, we'll finish Season 1 next week, so that's really exciting. I'm excited for that, so definitely be ready to check that out next week. Speaking of Batman, I have a video that I'm working on for my YouTube channel, Nim TV, that is about Batman. So... I have a series on my channel called Trilogy Time where I review movie trilogies. And the next trilogy on my list, well, I don't have an actual list of that, an ordered list. I have a list, but not like a specific order. But the next movie on my list, the next movie that next trilogy that I'm tackling is the Dark Knight trilogy. And I have a very interesting opinion on it, I think. Maybe. I don't know.
If he says so himself.
Yeah, if I do say so myself. Might not be completely positive opinions, like you might think. I don't know. There'll definitely be a lot of positive opinions, but you'll just have to see. You'll just have to check it out. I know I'm intriguing you so much that you have to click the link in the description to my YouTube channel and subscribe so that you won't miss it when the video comes out. I don't know when it'll come out. It'll come out sometime before the end of the month. That's all I know. It's before the end of April. So anyways, definitely be ready for that. That's exciting. I'm actually really excited. I just finished the script today as we're recording this, and I think it's going good. So anyways, you can listen to this podcast on multiple different platforms, that being YouTube and a bunch of audio platforms. Pretty much any main audio platform you would listen to podcasts on, like Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and actually, is it on? Yeah, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and like many others. You can also listen to it on our YouTube channel, which is titled WABAN. There's a link in the description to that as well. That YouTube channel houses every episode of the podcast, but also some gaming videos we've been doing. We're almost done with our Portal videos. We did Portal 1 and Portal 2, and next up, we're going to do Hollow Knight. That is the plan, right? Yes, yeah, this is the plan. So we're going to play Hollow Knight next, so that'll be coming soon once the Portal videos are done. So, yeah, and this podcast is uploaded every single Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time, so that's when you can expect a new episode of this podcast. And that's about all. That was a very scatterbrained outro. Yeah. Sometimes I'm more concise. Sometimes I'm more like quick, concise. This was just scatterbrained. All this Batman talk has really made me scatterbrained. So anyways, thank you all for watching. I've been Nim.
And I'm Cub.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.